A police investigation into the kidnapping of the Moti brothers from Limpopo has stalled. This after their father interdicted the police from speaking to the children. It's believed that the family relocated to Dubai. The siblings were snatched at gunpoint on the 20th of October and released unharmed 3 weeks later. eNCA's Barry Bateman is chasing the latest and joins us now for an update. So Barry, this is highly irregular, highly unusual that people who are victims of a crime would simply not cooperate with the police. And that's our understanding at this point.
Absolutely, that's our understanding. You say it is highly irregular because when you're a victim of a crime, your cooperation with the police contributes to their efforts to trying to track down the people who committed the crime. A lot of the anger, I think, from the public that has come out is that this might happen again. And that is the concern that has been shared by the police, saying that their efforts to track down the people who took these children by gunpoint, that cannot be forgotten, and held them for 3 weeks. They can't take that next step towards trying to find those people. It shows, and we know now that 50 million rand ransom has been paid. That was also reported by News 24 a couple of weeks ago. Crime pays if this is the way it's going to be going, because there's not going to be any accountability. So that is the concern from the police. The investigation has essentially come to a standstill.
What is the family saying?
I have spoken to, or I actually tried to call the father directly. There was no response there. I sent messages as well. I eventually got through to a family spokesperson. And her position was, and we put everything to them. So before we even ran with the story, we had all the information at our disposal, the confirmation from the SAPS that there'd been this interdict, that the family has moved. We put all of this to the family spokesperson, and the simple response was the family is not speaking to any media at this stage. So very unfortunate. We're not getting any explanation for the course of action that they've taken.
So as things stand, Barry, just outline for us then, we have only one version, but it's the official version that they are not cooperating. So even when there's a dispute as to the truthfulness of that reporting, at this point, that's the only version, and the family has had an opportunity to put their side of the story, and they haven't.
Absolutely. And you know, not just from the SAPS. So we've gone to the SAPS. I've got the spokesperson on record. We've also gone to Minister Barry Bateman, and we've got him on record as well. And he says in our interview with him that I have been briefed on this matter, and we consider it to be a case of non-cooperation by the complainants.
But importantly, Barry, we are not at a point where the SAPS is considering their non-cooperation to be obstruction of the cause of justice, are we?
Not at all, and I think you're quite right. That is very important to note. So, and it was Minister Barry Bateman who made this point. He said, because we asked him direct, do you consider this obstruction of justice? And he said, no, we don't. We consider this non-cooperation, and we hope that the family will change their approach and we can actually sit down with them. However, he did say at some point, if the circumstances change, they might draw the line in the sand and they'll change their tactics.
It's quite extraordinary also, Barry, to go to the... It's one thing to say to the police, don't interview, you know, the boys after they've been released. They've just been through a lot. Give them time. And at a different point, we'll be able to avail them for you to actually interact with them. It's quite another to say, don't speak to them at all. But it's really extraordinary to go to the lengths of getting a court interdict against such processes. What's going on here, Barry? Because a lot of people are saying, this is surely intriguing as a story, but we have more questions than answers all of these weeks and months later.
I think you're quite right. You know, police investigators, when it comes to dealing with minors, they take a very different approach. Okay, so there's, and this is instructed by law as well. You've got the Criminal Procedure Act, which deals with, handling minors in criminal matters. You've got the Child Justice Act as well. And there are many provisions which are put in place there to protect the well-being of the child in the criminal justice process. So when it would come to interviewing a child, for example, you would do it through a social worker or somebody who is specialized within the SAPS to be able to obtain the statement from the child. Because it's very important as well that you need to obtain a statement that is useful in a court of law. It's not just about questioning or let's go even extreme, say, interrogation. So to claim, if the father had come to the police and said, give us some space, please, we just want to get them some counseling or whatever, I do not believe that the police would be unreasonable and say, no, we want access right now. So to go to the degree of getting an interdict certainly is a very extreme measure and has been reflected by the guests we had on yesterday. We had Yusuf Abramji, we had Mike Boles, who's dealt with kidnapping cases himself. There are different ways of going about this.
Yeah.
But to get a flat-out interdict, it closes the door entirely.
And then the story about them moving to Dubai, what's that about? I mean, one imagines, of course, that, you know, as a family, they've been through a lot. Particularly the boys have been quite through a lot. And you know, I can only imagine that there would be safety concerns. But I wonder how this interacts with their confidence or lack thereof in the South African criminal justice system, and them deciding, do we know if they're gone to Dubai and not returning, or it's just temporarily in Dubai? Do we know any of these details?
We don't have that clarity. What the police are saying is that they've relocated to Dubai. Relocate says to me that's quite permanent. But you know, we've asked the family this exact same question. Is there any intention of them coming back? We just don't know that. But Red, you must look at the two issues together, perhaps, to maybe give you some insight. There were two things that happened. There was an interdict against the police, which we understand was an ex parte application. Ex parte applications done without the input from the party against whom the interdict is obtained. But there's always a return date on an ex parte, where there's a future date at which point the person who's been interdicted can then make a submission and the court decides whether or not to make it permanent. But that window, now, so you stop the interdict for the police to interview the children, and in that period, you now pack up and you leave the country. So it certainly does raise many questions as to why you would do that.
All right, Barry, because it's public record and it's out there, a man called Nazir Osman, you know, called onto the Clement Manyatela show on 702 this morning. He was fuming about how the story has been handled by various sectors, including the media, including ourselves. And some of the questions I've been putting to you are partly informed by that interaction. He basically, and I'm going to put this on the record, that his version is that the family were feeling unsafe in South Africa. They've lost confidence. They believe that there have been leaks on the side of the police. And after they spoke to the police, they were receiving messages that were basically saying and revealing that whoever was sending these messages was privy to the conversations with the police. We did reach out to Nazir Osman as eNCA. He's not keen to go on the record and continue the conversation with us. But I thought I should just record.
Absolutely. But 2 points on that quickly.
Yeah.
What we understand from the SAPS, our internal sources and so on, is that an international company, a company which specializes in hostage negotiation, was brought into the country. It was at that point that the SAPS was in fact locked out of the negotiations.
Yeah.
The police played no part whatsoever in securing the release of the boys. Despite this, on the night that the boys were released, a statement was issued by the family and it was put up onto the family's company's website saying that they thanked the police for their support throughout this whole process. I can tell you now that statement has since been removed from that website.